What do you do when your own brother sells your inheritance behind your back? Aurora had always believed the farmhouse, her grandfather's legacy, was safe. But when Caius, her younger brother, casually informed her he had sold it for a fraction of its value, everything changed. Enraged but determined, Aurora rushed home only to discover that the real farm hadn't been sold. The betrayal, however, ran deeper than just the property. Stay tuned to find out how Aurora plans to take back what's rightfully hers, and don't forget to subscribe for more compelling stories. My younger brother secretly sold my $10 million farmhouse for just $4 million and called me, his voice casual, almost smug. "I spent all the money on my girlfriend's business. She needed it more than you." I froze, my mind spinning. Without a second thought, I canceled my trip and rushed home. But when I arrived, I just smiled. Because the farmhouse Caius sold wasn't the real one. I never thought I'd return to Grandfather Silas's farm like this. But life has a way of dragging you back to places you never planned on seeing again, especially when betrayal forces your hand. The call came on a Tuesday afternoon, right as I was wrapping up a research report on sustainable irrigation techniques in my Denver office. My phone buzzed, and I almost ignored it until I saw the name, Caius. We hadn't spoken much in the past few years. He was always chasing his next business idea, and I was too buried in my work to get involved in family matters, but something in my gut told me to answer. "Aurora," Caius's voice was smug, too casual. "I figure I should let you know. I sold the farm." For a moment, I thought I misheard. "You what? The farm? Grandpa's farm?" "Got $4 million for it," he said, as if it was just another deal, nothing more than a piece of property. Not the place where we spent childhood summers, where Grandfather Silas had built his entire life's work. My hand gripped the phone, my knuckles white. "You sold it without even talking to me?" Caius sighed, clearly annoyed. "Come on, Aurora. You haven't set foot on that land in years. You're too busy with your fancy scientist life in Denver. The farm was just sitting there collecting dust." The anger surged in my chest. "You had no right to do that, Caius." He laughed sharp, careless. "Actually, I did. I was named executor. That means I get to make the calls." My mind spun, the words barely registering. "Where's the money?" A pause. Then the smirk in his voice was clear. Spent it." I went cold. "What do you mean, you spent it?" "My girlfriend, Olivia, her business needed a boost," Caius explained, as if it was perfectly reasonable. "She had this amazing investment opportunity, and she needed funds fast. I helped her out." I felt the air leave my lungs. "You sold our grandfather's farm for a third of its real value and blew the money on Olivia's business?" "She needed it more than you," Caius shot back, defensive. "You don't need the money, Aurora. You've got your career, your fancy research projects. What do you care about an old farm?" I ended the call before I could speak, the rage boiling over, choking me. Within an hour, I'd booked the next flight to Austin, Texas. The entire flight, my mind raced. How could Caius do this? He'd always been reckless, but this wasn't just bad judgment. This was theft. By the time I landed, my anger had hardened into something more dangerous: determination. He thought he could get away with it, but he didn't know one thing. Grandfather Silas wasn't a fool, and I had a feeling he'd seen this coming. When I arrived at the farm, or what was left of it, a wave of emotions hit me like a tidal wave. Memories flooded back summer mornings feeding the horses, the smell of fresh soil after a rainstorm, the sound of Grandfather's laughter echoing from the front porch. Now, the land was abandoned, overgrown, the heart of our family sold like it was nothing. I needed answers. And there was only one person who could give them to me: Finch Bennett, Grandfather's longtime lawyer. Finch Bennett was waiting when I arrived at his Dallas office the next morning. He looked up from his desk as I entered, his sharp eyes filled with something close to expectation. "I was wondering when you'd show up, Aurora," he said, gesturing for me to sit. I didn't waste time. "Caius sold the farm without my consent. He says he had the right." Finch sighed, tapping his fingers against a thick folder on his desk. "Yes, I received the notice yesterday." I stared at him. "So that's it? He wins?" Finch gave a small smile.
That depends.
Have you read your grandfather's final estate documents? A strange feeling stirred in my chest. I read the will. It left everything to both of us, but Caius was executor. Finch nodded. That's true, but your grandfather was a very careful man. He slid the folder toward me. 2 weeks before he passed, he filed an amended deed. I hesitated before opening it. The first page immediately caught my eye. Character clause, I read aloud. Finch's expression turned serious. Silas knew Caius's weaknesses. He loved him, but he didn't trust him with the farm. So he added a safeguard. If either of you attempted to sell the farm without the other's agreement, ownership would immediately and irrevocably transfer to the wronged party. I blinked. Are you saying... Finch leaned back in his chair. The sale is void. The farm is yours, Aurora. A mix of relief and shock washed over me. Caius doesn't know about this, does he? Finch shook his head. No, and I'd advise not telling him until we call a legal meeting. I sat back, trying to process it all. Grandfather Silas had known. He had seen Caius's recklessness, his greed, and he had planned for it. I clenched my fists. So what now? Finch checked his watch. Now you get ready, because once Caius finds out, he's going to fight this. And something tells me he's not going down without a scene. That evening, I drove back to the farm. I stood on the overgrown land, the setting sun casting a golden glow over the empty fields. This farm wasn't just land, it was my grandfather's legacy. It was everything he had built, everything he had left behind, and Caius had tried to throw it away for a quick payout and a selfish dream. I pulled out my phone. Tomorrow, Caius would learn the truth. He thought he had won. He had no idea what was coming. The next morning, I woke up early, my mind racing with everything that was about to happen. Caius had no idea that his so-called victory was about to collapse right in front of him, and knowing my brother, he wasn't going to take it well. By 10:00 a.m., I was sitting across from Finch Bennett in his office. He had already arranged a legal meeting, ensuring Caius and his lawyer would be present. I could tell Finch had seen plenty of messy family disputes in his career. But this was personal. Caius arrived 20 minutes late, of course. He strolled in like he owned the place, dressed in an expensive suit that he probably paid for with money he had no right to touch. Olivia followed behind him, her expression set in boredom, clearly annoyed at having to be here. His lawyer, a nervously looking man barely out of law school, shuffled in behind them, looking overwhelmed. Caius smirked the second he saw me. Wow, Aurora. Didn't think you'd care enough to show up. I ignored the jab and gestured toward the empty chair across from me. Sit down, Caius. Caius flopped into the chair with an exaggerated sigh. Let's make this quick. I've got better things to do. Finch cleared his throat, ignoring the attitude. Caius, I assume you're aware that Aurora has concerns regarding the sale of your grandfather's farm. Caius rolled his eyes, leaning back. We've been over this. I was the executor. I had every legal right to sell the property. Finch calmly slid a document across the table. Actually, you didn't. Caius frowned but picked it up. As his eyes scanned the words, his smug expression faded. The arrogance drained from his face, and his hands tightened around the paper. For the first time, I saw something I hadn't seen in years. Real fear. What is this? His voice wasn't as confident anymore. Finch steeled his fingers. That is the amended deed your grandfather filed 2 weeks before his passing. It contains a character clause stating that if one of his grandchildren attempted to sell the farm without the other's consent, ownership would automatically and irrevocably transfer to the wronged party. Caius's face paled. No, that can't be right. Oh, but it is, I said, my voice steady. The moment you signed that sale agreement, you lost everything. The farm belongs to me now. Caius slammed the document on the table. This is a setup, he snapped. Grandpa wouldn't do this to me. Finch remained calm. Silas Carter knew his grandchildren well, Caius. He knew Aurora would protect the farm, and he knew you well. Let's just say he anticipated your actions. Caius turned to his lawyer, his voice frantic. Do something. The young man shifted in his seat uncomfortably. Legally speaking, the amendment is binding. The sale is void. Olivia crossed her arms, her voice sharp. So what does that mean? The money is gone? We already spent it. That's your problem, I said, my tone icy cold. Caius's face twisted in frustration as he pushed away from the table and stood up. You can't just take everything from me! I met his glare. I didn't take it. You threw it away. A heavy silence stretched through the room. Caius had lost completely. Finch sighed and slid another document forward. There's one more issue. As executor, you had a legal duty to uphold the estate's integrity. By selling the farm without Aurora's consent, you violated those duties. He tapped the paper. Effective immediately, you are removed as executor. Caius stared at the paper like it was a death sentence. You're joking. Nope, I said, leaning forward. I'm in charge now. Olivia suddenly stood, grabbing Caius's arm. Caius, we need to go. Caius stood frozen, his gaze still fixed on the document in his hands. I knew exactly what he was thinking. He had lost everything. The farm, the money, the control. Everything he'd worked for was slipping through his fingers. But Finch wasn't finished. He picked up another file, his voice cold and calculated. One last thing. Since the sale is void, that means you owe the estate every dollar you received from it. Caius visibly swallowed, the weight of it all settling on his chest. I don't have the money. I leaned back in my chair, my gaze never leaving him. Then we have a problem, don't we? Olivia, clearly seething with fury, yanked on Caius's arm again. Caius, we're leaving! But before they could escape, Finch's voice sliced through the tension. Oh, and Caius, he called, his shoulders tight with the tension in the room. Any attempt to challenge this legally will result in a full estate audit. Finch's tone was calm, but it held an undeniable weight. That means every financial transaction you made as executor will be investigated. Caius's jaw clenched. He knew exactly what Finch meant. Every shady deal, every dollar funneled into Olivia's business would be laid bare for all to see. Caius didn't speak. He just stormed out, Olivia's heels clicking sharply against the floor, echoing his fury. The door slammed behind them. I finally let out a breath, but it didn't feel like victory, not yet. That night, I sat alone on Grandfather Silas's old porch, staring out at the land. The cool Texas air wrapped around me, but I couldn't shake the gnawing feeling in my gut. I should have felt relief after all. The farm was mine now, legally and forever. But something about Caius's desperation troubled me. He was reckless, yes, but he wasn't stupid. He had to have known this was a possibility. He had to have known that Grandfather Silas would have planned for this moment. So why was he so desperate? My phone buzzed, dragging me from my thoughts. It was a text from Caius. We need to talk. I stared at the message, my stomach twisting. This wasn't over. It couldn't be. I let the words sit there for a while. A part of me wanted to ignore it. I had won after all. The farm was legally mine, and Caius had lost every ounce of control. But I knew him too well. Caius didn't just walk away, not without a backup plan. Finally, I typed, meet me at the farmhouse, 1 hour. By the time I arrived, the sky had darkened, and the air smelled thick with damp earth, the kind of scent that always came before a storm. The land stretched out in front of me, abandoned and forgotten fences still broken, crops overgrown. It was clear the place had been neglected for far too long. Caius's SUV rolled up 10 minutes late, its headlights cutting through the shadows. He stepped out slowly, his posture slumped, looking different this time, tired, nervous. Olivia wasn't with him. For once, it was just the two of us. He shoved his hands into his pockets, avoiding my gaze. You got what you wanted. I leaned against the porch railing, watching him carefully. Did I? Caius let out a bitter laugh, the sound cold and hollow. Spare me the lecture, Aurora. You think you're the hero in all this? He gestured toward the land, the pain and frustration evident in his eyes. You left. You had your career, your research, your perfect life. I was the one who stayed. I was the one who took care of everything. I tilted my head, studying him with a mix of pity and frustration. You didn't take care of anything, Caius. You sold Grandfather's farm for a quick payday, and you burned through the money like it was nothing. His jaw tightened. I was trying to build something. I crossed my arms. And where is it now? He didn't answer, and that told me everything. Something in my gut twisted. Caius, this isn't just about the farm, is it? He hesitated, his eyes darting away, and for the first time in a long time, I saw it. Fear. I stepped closer. How bad is it? Caius ran a hand through his hair, looking anywhere but at me. I borrowed against grandfather's other accounts. I felt my stomach drop. What? He exhaled sharply. The estate's tax accounts, the maintenance funds, the savings, everything. I pulled from them thinking I could pay it back before anyone noticed. No, his voice cracked. But the investment tanked. The developer went bankrupt, and now... He let out a hollow laugh. Now it's gone. I felt physically sick. How much? His voice barely rose above a whisper. $750,000. The world tilted for a second. I pressed my fingers against my forehead, forcing myself to think. So that's why you were so desperate to sell the farm? Caius nodded, looking miserable. I thought I could fix it before anyone found out. I closed my eyes. And Olivia? His laugh was humorless. She left, took what little she could, and ran the second she realized there was nothing left. A long silence stretched between us. I should have walked away. I should have told Caius this was his mess to fix. But then I thought of Grandfather Silas, of the way he had always believed in second chances. And despite everything, Caius was still my brother. I pulled out my phone and dialed Finch. He answered on the second ring. I need to see you, I said. Now. An hour later, Caius and I sat in Finch's office. Finch, unshaken as always, didn't seem surprised when I told him everything. Instead, he opened a drawer and pulled out a thick folder. Your grandfather knew this was a possibility, Finch said, sliding the file toward me. So he planned for it. I flipped through the pages, my heart racing. Insurance policies, financial safeguards, legal contingencies, things Grandfather Silas had set up long before he passed. Finch tapped one document. This is an insurance policy covering unauthorized estate investments. If triggered, it allows for recovery of up to $800,000. Caius let out a breath like he'd been punched. So we're covered? Finch's gaze hardened. Not exactly. There are conditions. Caius braced himself. Of course there are. Finch leaned forward. First, you must sign an official admission of wrongdoing. That means formally acknowledging your misuse of estate funds. Caius stiffened. And if I don't? Finch's face didn't change. Then Aurora will have no choice but to file a legal claim against you, which would trigger a full forensic audit of the estate's finances. He paused. Given the evidence, it's likely you'd be charged with fraud. Caius's face drained of color. Fraud? Yes, Finch said simply. And that would mean prison time. Caius's hand shook slightly as he wiped it over his face. And the other conditions? Finch folded his hands. You will be required to attend financial counseling at your own expense, and you will have no further involvement in the estate, ever. Caius turned to me. His voice wasn't angry anymore. It was almost pleading. And you're okay with this? I held his gaze. I don't want to see you in prison, Caius, but I'm not going to protect you from the consequences of what you did. For a long moment, he didn't move. Then, slowly, he nodded. Fine. Finch slid the admission document forward. Caius took the pen with shaking hands and signed. And just like that, it was over. We stepped outside into the night air. Caius stood by his car, staring out at the city skyline. I don't know what to do now, he admitted. I hesitated before answering. You start over. Caius let out a weak laugh. How? I sighed, studying him. The brother I had grown up with, the one who had lost himself chasing the wrong things. The farm still needs fixing, I said after a pause. You could help. His head snapped toward me, eyes wide with surprise. You'd let me? I met his gaze. You're still my brother, Caius. But this isn't about money anymore. If you want a second chance, you have to earn it. He didn't answer right away, but after a long pause, he nodded. Maybe, just maybe, it wasn't too late to fix what was broken. The days following my meeting with Finch were heavy, weighed down by the silence and the aftermath of everything that had unfolded. For so long, I had been consumed by anger towards Caius, convinced that he would never change. But standing there with him now, seeing him humbled, uncertain, and lost, it felt strange. And yet, there we were, side by side, on Grandfather Silas's farm, staring at the overgrown fields, the broken fences, and the house that had once been filled with laughter and life. "I barely recognize it," Caius muttered, his voice low. I glanced at him, my eyes tracing the same view. "Yeah, well, that's what happens when someone tries to sell a place instead of taking care of it." Caius exhaled sharply but didn't argue. He wasn't fighting anymore, and for the first time in years, I could see a change in him, a shift that I couldn't ignore. We spent the next week clearing out the old barn, repairing fences, and assessing the damage that came from years of neglect and bad choices. Caius wasn't accustomed to this kind of labor, and at first he struggled. But he showed up every morning, never once complaining. One evening, after a long day spent fixing the porch steps, I found him sitting on the front steps, staring out over the land as the sun sank below the horizon. The golden light stretched across the fields, casting long shadows over the same land that Grandfather Silas had cherished. "I used to hate this place," Caius said quietly, his voice hesitant, almost unsure. I thought it was a trap, a constant reminder of everything I didn't want to be. I sat down beside him, wiping the sweat from my forehead. "And now?" He was silent for a long moment, then sighed deeply. "Now I think I get it. Grandpa wasn't trying to hold us back. He was giving us something that actually mattered." I nodded, watching the wind ripple through the tall grass. "He always thought 5 moves ahead." Caius chuckled, but there was no humor in it. "Yeah, and I never thought past the next dollar sign." The months that followed settled into a rhythm of hard work and quiet realizations. Caius stuck with it, something I honestly hadn't expected. At first, I kept my guard up, waiting for him to give up, to run when things got difficult. But he didn't. He learned how to fix the equipment, how to plant crops properly, how to tend to the land like Grandfather had. Slowly, I realized something. He wasn't just doing it for me. He was doing it for himself. One afternoon, we stood in the middle of the restored barn, the scent of fresh hay in the air. Caius wiped his hands on his jeans and glanced around. "It actually looks like a real farm again." "That's because it is," I replied. He let out a deep breath, nodding. "Feels different." I studied him for a moment. "You feel different." Caius hesitated, then nodded. "Yeah." And for the first time, I believed him. A year after everything had fallen apart, we held a ceremony in Grandfather Silas's honor. We invited neighbors, old friends, and the few people in town who had known him well. Caius stood beside me as we unveiled a memorial plaque near the farmhouse. It simply read, "Silas Carter, a man who built more than land." As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a soft glow over the farm, I realized something. Grandfather had always planned for this, not just for the land or the money, but for us. He knew that Caius and I would never truly see eye to eye until something forced us to. He'd put in safeguards anticipating Caius's weaknesses, but he had also left the door open for redemption, and Caius had finally stepped through it. Later that night, after the guests had gone home, I found Caius sitting on the porch, staring up at the stars. "Still thinking about running back to Austin?" I asked, a hint of a smile playing on my lips. He smirked. "Nah, turns out I like the quiet." I sat down beside him, letting the cool night air settle around us. After a while, Caius asked, "Do you think Grandfather knew this would happen?" I thought for a moment, then answered, "Yeah, I think he knew exactly what he was doing." Caius sighed, a small smile tugging at the corners of his mouth. "Yeah, me too." And for the first time in a long while, we sat there not as enemies, not as rivals, but as brothers. What do you do when the person you trusted most betrays you in the worst way possible? When your own flesh and blood sells what's left of your family's legacy for a fraction of its value? And yet, even after the betrayal, you find yourself standing face to face with them, wondering if there's any way to rebuild what was broken. Aurora never imagined that she'd have to fight her own brother for the family farm. Caius thought he could sell their grandfather's legacy for a quick payday, using the money to fuel his reckless ambitions. But he didn't count on one thing: Aurora wasn't about to let him destroy everything their grandfather had worked for. And when she found out about the legal safeguard her grandfather had put in place, it was game over for Caius. But it didn't end with a legal victory. Aurora, despite everything, gave her brother the chance to redeem himself, to do the hard work of fixing what he'd broken, and Caius surprisingly took it. Slowly, he began to change, no longer focused on quick gains, but on something real, on building something that mattered. So here's the question: would you have given someone like Caius a second chance? Or would you have walked away, knowing that their actions had consequences they needed to face? Let's talk about it in the comments. And if you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, subscribe, and stay tuned for more.
Kate, how much did you inherit? Mark's voice cut through the heavy silence of the night. Your dad was loaded. I need to know what you got. The words felt like slaps in the face. I looked at my husband, searching for any sign that this was some misguided attempt to comfort me. But his eyes were cold, calculating. Tonight of all nights, my father's funeral, and this is where his mind was? Nothing, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. There wasn't anything left by the time the medical bills were paid. Mark's lip curled into a sneer. Really? Is that the story you're sticking with? I stood my ground. Yes, it is. He scoffed and turned away, mumbling something about how incompetent my brother Mike must have been in handling everything. I could feel the unease settle deep in my gut. Mark's true intentions were becoming clear, and they weren't pretty. I moved to the kitchen, needing a moment away from his probing eyes. I started the kettle, hoping a cup of tea might soothe my nerves, but the quiet clinking of the spoon in my mug did nothing to drown out the alarming thoughts racing through my head. Mark's voice reached me even from the other room. I need a drink, he grumbled, the sound of him rummaging through the liquor cabinet, loud and grating. How had I missed these signs? Or had I just ignored them, hoping things would magically get better? He walked into the kitchen, glass of whiskey in hand. You know, I thought marrying you meant a step up in the world, he said bluntly. But apparently I was wrong. I didn't reply. Words felt useless against his blatant greed. I just stared into my tea, feeling more alone than ever. After a tense silence, he finally left the room. I heard the TV flicker on, blaring some mindless show. I clenched my fists around the mug. This was the moment, right now, where everything broke open. I couldn't ignore who he was anymore, and I certainly couldn't let him have any power over my future. I decided to keep a closer watch on him. It was clear now that I couldn't trust him, that whatever affection we once shared had withered away, replaced by his hunger for wealth and status. A few days later, I received a call from my mother, Paula. She didn't offer condolences or ask how I was doing, just launched into complaints about sorting out Dad's affairs. Typical. She always favored Mike, and I was used to being the afterthought. Kate, I need you to help with the house, she droned. Sure, Mom, I replied mechanically. I'll be over tomorrow. Bring Mark, she added. We could use a man's help. I felt my frustration spike, but kept my voice even. Mark's busy. It'll just be me. The call ended abruptly, and I sat there, the phone still pressed to my ear long after she hung up. Mark breezed into the room just then, sipping another whiskey. Spout, pack your things, I said suddenly. He looked at me, puzzled. What for? We're going to Mom's tomorrow. She needs help with Dad's stuff. He scowled. Are you serious? I have better things to do. You're coming, I replied firmly, our eyes locking in a silent battle. Eventually, he shrugged and walked away. That night, as I lay in bed, I listened to his soft snores and felt a pit of fear and determination grow within me. This facade was crumbling, and soon everything would come to light. It was time to brace myself for the storm. I pulled up to the old family home, a sense of dread settling over me. Mark sat in the passenger seat, tapping his fingers impatiently on the dashboard. Let's get this over with, he muttered as he climbed out of the car. As we walked up the path, memories flooded back. The house looked the same, yet everything felt different. The door swung open, and there was Paula, her face a mix of annoyance and impatience. It's about time, she snapped. I've been dealing with everything on my own. I stepped inside, brushing past her coldness. Mom, this is Mark, I introduced, though she'd met him briefly at the funeral. Paula glanced at him and nodded curtly before turning her back on us. Mike's in the study, going through paperwork. You two can start in there. I followed her voice to the study, the room an organized mess of papers, file cabinets, and old mementos. Mike barely looked up as we entered. Seeing him again was like running into a brick wall. His smirk was as smug as ever. Hey, big sis, he scoffed. Finally showed up to pitch in? You might say that, I replied tersely. Let's just get through this, all right? Mark hovered by the bookshelf, shifting his weight and looking uncomfortable. Paula's voice echoed from the hallway, giving orders like a drill sergeant. I rolled up my sleeves and dipped into the dreariness of sorting through years of memories and documents. Hours passed, the air thick with unspoken tension and strained small talk. Mark wandered out, leaving me to fend for myself with Paula and Mike. This is pointless, Mike grumbled, tossing another stack of papers aside. Dad should have taken better care of this stuff. Maybe if you'd helped him once in a while. I let the words trail off, biting back more I wanted to say, but Mike just ignored me, pulling out another drawer, searching for something of value. Just then Paula stormed in. Oh, for heaven's sake, she said, her tone dripping with irritation. Why are you two still in here? There's more to do in the garage. We moved to the garage, and I got hit by another wave of nostalgia mixed with frustration. Old boxes of Christmas decorations, tools my dad barely used, and a neglected bike Mike rode once before, demanding a new one. Mark had reappeared, leaning against the car and scrolling through his phone. I could sense his growing irritation. He wasn't here to help. He was here to gain. While I rummaged around, Paula fixed me with a hard look. You know, she started, your brother was always the responsible one. Your father and I could depend on him. My grip tightened on an old photo album. Is that so? Yes, she snapped, clearly relishing the criticism, unlike you, running off when things got tough. I felt my pulse quicken, but I forced myself to breathe deeply. No point in arguing now. I glanced at Mark, who seemed to be barely masking his impatience. For the first time, I felt a flicker of anger at him, not just for his greed, but for what I now saw as a willful blindness to the person I had become. Eventually, exhausted and angry, we decided to call it a day. Mike and Paula stayed behind, and Mark and I drove home in silence. When we got there, Mark finally spoke. Your family's something else, you know, he said, almost as if admiring them. Tell me about it, I mumbled, feeling drained. As I shut the door behind us, I already knew this wasn't the end. Things were just beginning to unravel, and I had to be ready for whatever came next. The storm was coming, and this time I wouldn't be caught off guard. I met Mark when I was just getting by at a dull office job. It wasn't much, but it was steady, unlike my up-and-down family life. Mark walked into the office one day, suave and confident. He made me laugh during our coffee breaks, and soon enough we were dating. I thought he was my escape. One evening, I decided to take him to meet my family, hoping for some strange reason they'd approve. We drove to my old neighborhood, my anxiety growing with each mile. When we arrived, the door swung open, and there was my mother. Who's this, then? Paula asked, eyeing Mark up and down like he was another project to criticize. It's Mark, I said, pushing down my nerves. My husband. Paula's eyebrow arched. Oh, finally snagged someone, did you? Mark put his arm around me, trying to lighten the mood. Nice to meet you, Paula. Kate's told me so much about you. She ignored his outstretched hand, focusing instead on who really mattered to her. Come inside, she said curtly, turning toward the living room. Mike lounged on the couch, flipping through TV channels, not even bothering to look up. Sup, he muttered, finally glancing our way. I took a deep breath. Mark, this is Mike, my brother. Hey, Mark offered, but Mike just nodded, turning back to the screen. It hurt seeing how little they'd changed. Paula and Mike centered around their own little world. At dinner, the tension thickened with every passing minute. Paula gushed over Mike's recent promotion, never asking about my life or my job. I could see Mark trying to keep up, looking uncomfortable. So, what do you do, Mark? Mike asked suddenly, not out of interest but as a challenge. I'm an investment consultant, he replied. Mike smirked. Guess that pays the bills, huh? It does, Mark said flatly, his patience wearing thin. The real blow came later when I found my father seated alone in his study. He looked so different, frail and tired, with his breathing labored. It broke my heart. He'd been a distant but kind presence in my chaotic childhood, working tirelessly to provide for us. "Hey, Dad," I said softly, his eyes lighting up slightly at the sound of my voice. "Kate, you're here," he rasped, a weak smile appearing. We talked quietly, catching up on lost time. He confided in me, telling me how hard it had been to manage things lately, how disappointed he was in how Paula and Mike were handling everything. He looked pained, not just physically but emotionally. "I'm sorry, Kate," he whispered. "I wish I could have done more for you." I squeezed his hand. "It's okay, Dad. You did what you could." Leaving the room, my chest tightened. Mark was in the kitchen, watching the interaction between Paula and Mike, his face unreadable. "It's a mess," he whispered as we walked out. "Your family, I mean." "I know," I whispered back, my voice barely holding together. This visit had reminded me why I left. The toxic dynamic between my mother and brother, their constant need to belittle me, to treat me as an afterthought. Later that night, as we drove home in silence, I made a promise to myself. I would be there for my dad, but I wouldn't be used by anyone again. Not by Paula, not by Mike, and certainly not by Mark. A week after that unsettling visit, I got a call from my mother. Her voice was tense. "Your father's getting worse, Kate," she said. "We need help." I knew this day would come. "I'll come over today," I replied, already dreading the interaction that lay ahead. I drove to the house, my mind weighing heavy with the mix of obligation and resentment. Mark didn't come this time, claiming he had a meeting. Might have been true, but I doubted it. Paula met me at the door, her face stern. "He's in his room," she said without a hint of gratitude. "And don't touch the things in the living room. Mike's sorting through some important stuff." I nodded and walked towards my father's room. Dad was propped up in bed, looking frailer than ever. His eyes met mine, a weary smile forming. "Kate, good to see you," he said, his voice a whisper. "I'm here to help, Dad," I replied, taking his hand. Over the next few days, I fell into a routine of caring for him, administering his medication, making sure he was comfortable, and speaking softly to ease his pain. Paula and Mike mostly stayed in the background, with their true colors showing through their absence. One evening, I overheard a heated conversation in the living room. Paula's voice was shrill. "We need more money, Mike. Your father's hospital bills are eating up everything." "We can't sell the house yet," Mike replied. "People would talk." I paused outside the door, my anger simmering. They were already planning how to cash in, even as Dad lay dying in the next room. I entered the room, making no effort to hide my presence. "Is this really the time to be talking about money?" I snapped. Paula glared at me. "Don't you start. You disappeared for years while we dealt with everything." "Dealt with everything?" I echoed incredulously. "Is that what you call living off Dad while he worked himself into the ground?" Mike stood up, his eyes cold. "You have no idea what it's been like. You left." "And I had every reason to leave," I shot back. Paula folded her arms. "We'll see how long you last this time." That night, I sat by my father, listening to his labored breaths. He opened his eyes and looked at me, sadness mingled with relief. "Kate, I'm so sorry for everything." My chest tightened. "Dad, you don't have to apologize." He shook his head weakly. "I wasn't there for you. Should have protected you from them." I couldn't hold back the tears. "I'm here now." The following morning, I found Paula rifling through his drawer. I stood in the doorway, my voice cold as ice. "What are you doing?" She looked up, startled. "Just organizing his things." "Sure," I said, my tone flat. "Because you've always been so organized, right?" She slammed the drawer shut. "Don't you dare judge me." "I'm not judging, I'm observing," I replied, moving to sit by my father, who had just woken up. The days dragged on with the same routine, the house thick with tension. Mike occasionally showed his face, usually to complain about something or another. I stayed focused, doing what I could for Dad. One evening, Dad's eyes sought mine with a seriousness I hadn't seen in a while. "There's a bank account," he whispered. My heart skipped a beat. "Bank account?" He nodded, struggling for breath. "Not much, but it's yours. Secret. Use it wisely, Kate." Tears welled up in my eyes as I realized the weight of his words. He'd done what he could to ensure I had something, a small act of protection amidst the chaos. I squeezed his hand, promising myself I would make it count. Knowing what I now did, I felt a flicker of hope and determination. My father's efforts wouldn't be in vain. I wouldn't let Paula, Mike, or even Mark control my fate any longer. This was just the beginning, and I was ready for whatever came next. The call came just after midnight. I had been tossing and turning in bed, my mind restless, when the phone rang, cutting through the silence. "It's your father." Paula's voice was clipped, devoid of emotion. "He's been taken to the hospital." I scrambled out of bed, barely replying as I threw on some clothes and grabbed my keys. By the time I reached the hospital, my heart was pounding with dread. I found Paula and Mike in the waiting area, looking annoyed rather than distressed. "The doctors are with him," Paula said brusquely. "We've been waiting for hours." I didn't bother to respond. Rushing past them, I found the room where Dad lay, surrounded by machines and tubes. He looked impossibly weak, barely recognizing me as I stepped closer. "Kate," he murmured. "I'm here, Dad," I whispered, clutching his hand. His grip was feeble but urgent. "Remember, the account. It's for you." "I know," I said, fighting back tears. "I'll take care of it." Moments later, his breathing grew shallow. The monitors beeped frantically and nurses rushed in. I was gently but firmly pushed out of the room. Paula and Mike stood in the hallway, waiting as if they were bored. After what felt like an eternity, a doctor emerged, his face solemn. "I'm sorry," he said. "He didn't make it." Paula's face hardened, betraying nothing. Mike sighed, as if inconvenienced. I fought to keep my composure, feeling a mix of grief and rage. They didn't even care. Back at the house, it didn't take long for tensions to explode. As I gathered some of Dad's belongings, Mike cornered me in the hallway. "What's this about a secret account?" he demanded. I stared at him, anger flaring. "None of your business." He stepped closer, his face contorted with a smirk. "I know he said something to you. You think you're getting away with it?" Paula appeared behind him, arms crossed. "Don't hold out on us, Kate. Whatever your father left, it's family property." "Don't you dare," I snapped, my voice shaking with incredulity. "You two leeched off him your whole lives. This is mine." Mike lunged, grabbing my arm. "You're not taking anything, you ungrateful." I yanked free, my temper boiling over. "Get your hands off me!" Mark chose that moment to stroll in, smirking as he took in the scene. "What's all this commotion?" "Kate thinks she's entitled to Dad's secret stash," Mike sneered. "Secret stash?" Mark's eyes lit up greedily. Fed up, I turned to leave, but Paula blocked my path. "You're not going anywhere," she spat. "Not until you tell us where that money is." "Over my dead body," I hissed, pushing past them. I stormed out, my heart racing. This wasn't just about the money anymore. It was about standing up to them, about breaking free from their grasp. I knew what I had to do, and I wasn't going to back down. That night, I sat in my apartment, clutching the small bank booklet Dad had given me. The modest sum was enough to start fresh, to carve out a new path for myself. Their selfishness and greed had pushed me too far. I wasn't the same naive girl they could push around. They were about to learn the hard way that I wasn't someone to mess with. From here on out, I would take control of my life. Their time of exploiting everything and everyone was over. The first steps of my plan were clear. The storm was here, and I was ready to face it head-on. I returned to my apartment, the weight of my father's funeral still hanging heavily over me. I barely had time to process my own grief before Mark cornered me in the kitchen. "Kate," he started, his eyes hard with impatience, "we need to talk about the inheritance again." I felt a surge of anger. "We've been over this. There's nothing significant." His face twisted with frustration. "Stop lying. I overheard Mike talking about a secret account. Your dad must have left something worth hiding." I glared at him, feeling my blood boil. "And what if he did?" "It's none of your business." "None of my business," he scoffed, stepping closer. "I'm your husband. Whatever you have, I have a right to it too." I took a deep breath, trying to stay calm. "I didn't marry you so you could pocket my family's money, Mark." His eyes narrowed. "You're being ridiculous. Besides, there's something else you should know." I crossed my arms. "What now?" Mark hesitated for a split second before dropping the bombshell. "I've been seeing someone else." The room seemed to spin for a moment. I steadied myself against the counter. "What?" I said, my voice barely a whisper. "Lana," he said matter-of-factly. "Mike's girlfriend. We've been seeing each other for months." Suddenly everything fell into place. His aloofness, the constant pressure about the inheritance, it all made sense. He had been planning this all along. You vile?" I started, but he cut me off. "And that's not all," he continued, reaching into his pocket and pulling out a set of papers. "I want a divorce. Sign these." I stared at the divorce papers he placed on the counter, feeling a strange mix of anger and calm. Somehow his betrayal was almost a relief. It was the final confirmation that I needed to break free from him. I grabbed a pen and started signing. He watched me, clearly expecting more of a fight, but I was done. Finished. As I handed the papers back, I felt a sense of liberation. "Fine," I said, my voice steady. "Good riddance." A moment of silence passed, then Mark's smugness reappeared. "Hope you and your so-called inheritance are very happy." Just then, he walked out the door, leaving me alone in the kitchen. I sat down, breathing deeply, taking in the newfound sense of freedom. Mark was out of my life, and I couldn't be happier. The days that followed felt strangely bright despite the chaos. Mark had moved in with Lana, his dreams of wealth tied to her. Meanwhile, I used my father's modest inheritance to start planning for my future. It wasn't a lot, but it was enough to rebuild. A couple of weeks later, the phone rang. It was Mike. "We need to talk," he said bluntly. "What now?" I replied, tired of their antics. "Mark," he spat out. "He moved in with Lana, thinking her family has money. They don't." I couldn't help but laugh. "Just desserts." "Good luck dealing with him," I said. "Not my problem anymore." "You're going to regret this," he hissed before hanging up. I leaned against the wall, feeling a small but satisfying victory. Mark's arrogance had led him right into a trap of his own making. As for me, I had a fresh slate and endless possibilities before me. Let them scheme and plot. I had learned the hard way how to stand up for myself, and nothing they did could take that away from me. I was finally free, ready to live life on my terms. The storm had come and gone, leaving me stronger and more determined than ever. And I wasn't done yet. I had plans, and nothing was going to stop me now. Mark's arrogant assumption that Lana's family had money proved to be his downfall. Within weeks, he was calling incessantly. At first, I ignored him, savoring the peace. One evening, the phone rang once more. I sighed and picked it up. "Hello?" "Kate, we need to talk." Mark's voice was desperate, a far cry from his usual arrogance. "Why? So you can try to worm your way back into my life?" I replied, my tone icy. "It's not like that," he pleaded. "Lana's family found out about us. They threw me out." I stifled a laugh, though I felt a tiny sense of satisfaction. "Not my problem," I said simply. "Kate, please," he continued, his voice wavering. "I made a mistake. We can fix this." I paused for a moment, savoring the irony. "You mean you finally realized what you had?" "Yes," he admitted, his voice almost a whisper. "I've been an idiot." "Well, I'm glad you admit it," I replied coolly. "But it's too late. You made your bed, Mark. Now lie in it." The silence stretched out between us, heavy and final. "Is that it, then?" he asked, his voice breaking. "That's it," I confirmed and hung up the phone. In the weeks that followed, I heard through the grapevine that Mark had been couch surfing, desperate and out of options. Mike had quickly distanced himself, blaming Mark for everything that went wrong and conveniently forgetting his own role in the mess. For once, I felt in control. I moved forward with my life, securing a small but significant freelance business. The inheritance my father left me became the seed money I needed. I poured my focus and determination into work, savoring the freedom and independence I had long craved. One crisp morning, while I was responding to client emails, the phone rang again. The caller ID showed Mike's number. I considered ignoring it, but curiosity got the better of me. "Hello? You think you're so smart, don't you?" Mike's voice seethed with anger. "Dad's money was supposed to be for all of us." "I earned it, Mike. You and Mom took everything else while Dad was alive," I replied, trying to keep my voice steady. "I hope you're happy," he spat. "We're losing the house." I took a deep breath. His anger was almost palpable, but it no longer had power over me. "Maybe now you'll understand what it's like to work for something." "You'll regret this, Kate. I'll make sure of it," he snarled before hanging up abruptly. I set the phone down, feeling the weight of his threat. But instead of fear, I felt an unusual sense of calm. I had faced worse, and survived. What could Mike possibly do now? As the weeks turned into months, I flourished. My small freelance business grew, and for the first time in years, I felt grounded and secure. Every time I heard about Mike and Paula's growing financial troubles, a part of me felt vindicated. One evening, I sat in my small but cozy apartment, looking out over the city. I had come a long way, and the journey had been anything but easy. Yet, here I was, standing tall and moving forward. The ghosts of my past no longer haunted me. They were simply part of the story I had overcome. The phone rang again, but this time I didn't feel a jolt of anxiety. I picked it up calmly, ready for whatever came next. Hello? Kate, it's Mom. She started, but I cut her off, my voice steady and firm. I'm done, Mom. Take care of yourselves. I hung up, feeling a profound sense of closure. The storm had come and gone. I was free, strong, and finally living life on my own terms. The years rolled by quickly after I hung up on my mother. I poured everything into my freelance business, growing it from a side hustle into a thriving enterprise. The modest inheritance from Dad turned out to be more than just financial stability. It was the foundation for a new life. My new apartment, though small, felt like a palace. It was mine, a space free of the shadows of my past. I spent comfortable evenings reading by the window, the city lights dancing in the distance, a stark contrast to the darkness of my earlier years. One afternoon, my phone rang. Seeing an unknown number, I almost let it go to voicemail, but then answered on a whim. Hello? Kate, this is Miss Johnson from the bank. I wanted to inform you that your mother's assets have been frozen. There's been a foreclosure on the house. I paused, taking in the information. Thank you for letting me know, I said before hanging up. A few days later, I found myself walking through an old, familiar neighborhood. The house looked the same, but there was a for sale sign on the lawn. I felt an odd mix of nostalgia and triumph. Paula and Mike's reign of exploiting Dad's hard work had come to an end. My phone buzzed again, a text this time. It was from Mike. You think you've won, don't you? This isn't over. I rolled my eyes. Grow up, Mike, I muttered, texting back a simple, move on with your life. I put the phone away and continued down the street, my steps lighter than they had been in years. Months passed, and my life continued to flourish. One chilly morning, as I was setting up a new project for a client, the doorbell rang. I opened it to find Mike standing there, looking more disheveled than I'd ever seen him. Kate, he began, desperation in his voice. I need help. I sighed, stepping outside and closing the door behind me. Mike, you've had chances, plenty of them. It's different now. We've lost everything. Mom's sick, he pleaded, his bravado gone. Look, I can't keep being your crutch. You need to stand on your own, I said, my voice firm but not unkind. We're family, he insisted. Family? I scoffed. You never acted like it. You chose to ignore Dad's wishes, and now you're paying the price. His shoulders slumped. For a moment, I almost pitied him. Almost. You need to go, I said finally. Figure out your life. He nodded, tears brimming in his eyes. I'm sorry, Kate. I watched as he walked away, a sense of finality settling over me. It wasn't my job to fix their mess anymore. I had my life to live and my own path to follow. As weeks turned into months, I started receiving updates on Paula and Mike through old neighbors. Their lives had become a cycle of struggle and regret. Strangely, I felt no satisfaction, just a profound sense of relief that I had escaped that toxic environment. One day, while taking a break from work, I found myself heading to a small, secluded park not far from my apartment. It was a quiet place, full of large oak trees and benches. I picked one near a small pond and sat down, the cool breeze soothing. As I sat there, I felt an odd sense of closeness to my father. It was almost as if his spirit was there, watching over me. I closed my eyes, taking in the peace of the moment. I've come a long way, Dad, I whispered to the wind, feeling his presence in the rustling leaves. Opening my eyes, I looked at the world around me with a sense of accomplishment. I had fought hard for this peace, and I would cherish it. There was a future ahead, bright and full of promise, and I was ready for whatever came next. Seriously, this is what you cooked for my promotion? Brian's harsh words sliced through the air, shattering the joyful mood that had filled our dining room moments earlier. I stared at him in disbelief, my heart sinking as his eyes narrowed with disgust at the meal I had spent hours preparing, his favorite, creamy mushroom risotto. The kids froze, their forks halfway to their mouths, sensing the sudden shift in their father's demeanor. Brian, what's wrong? I asked, my voice trembling slightly. I thought you loved this dish. He scoffed, pushing his plate away. Loved it? This tastes like cardboard. How hard is it to follow a simple recipe? Jake's lip began to quiver, and Zoe's eyes welled up with tears. I reached across the table, placing a reassuring hand on each of their arms. "Daddy's just joking around," I lied, forcing a smile. "Why don't we all take a break and come back to our food when it's cooled down a bit?" Brian shot me a contemptuous glare, but I refused to meet his gaze, focusing instead on comforting our children. As they scampered off to play, I turned to my husband, my heart pounding. "What's gotten into you?" I hissed, keeping my voice low. "You're scaring the kids." He leaned back in his chair, a smug grin spreading across his face. "I'm just being honest, Ellie. If you can't handle the truth, that's your problem." I opened my mouth to protest, but the words died on my lips. This wasn't the caring, supportive man I had married. The one who had celebrated every minor accomplishment in our lives, who had doted on our children and made them feel like the center of the universe. As I watched him rise from the table and stride out of the room, I couldn't shake the feeling that something had shifted irrevocably within our family. And for the first time, I found myself questioning the man I thought I knew better than anyone else in the world. Over the next few days, Brian's behavior only grew more erratic and disturbing. The man I had once admired for his gentle strength and unwavering devotion to our family had been replaced by a sneering, cold-hearted stranger. "Listen up, you little brats," he barked at Jake and Zoe one morning as they dawdled over their breakfast. "When I tell you to do something, you do it. No questions asked, understand?" The kids nodded meekly, their eyes wide with fear. I stepped in, my heart racing. "Brian, that's enough," I said firmly. "They're just children. There's no need to speak to them that way." He turned his icy glare on me. "And you," he spat, "don't think I haven't noticed the way you've been coddling them, undermining my authority. It stops now." I recoiled, stunned by the venom in his voice. Before I could respond, he stormed out of the house, leaving us all shell-shocked in his wake. That evening, after putting the kids to bed, I called my Uncle Tom, desperate for advice. "He's like a different person," I sobbed into the phone. "I don't know what's happening to him, but it's scaring me, Tom, and the kids are terrified." Uncle Tom's voice was gentle but firm. "You need to get out of there, Ellie. At least for a little while, until we can figure out what's going on with Brian. Stay with your parents, or come to my place. Just get yourself and the kids to safety." I shook my head, even though he couldn't see me. "I can't just leave," I protested. "He's my husband, the father of my children. I have to try to help him, to get through to him." "Ellie?" Uncle Tom sighed heavily. "Sometimes the people we love the most are the ones who can hurt us the deepest. Promise me you'll at least consider getting out for a while, okay? For the kids' sake, if nothing else." I promised, but deep down I knew I wouldn't leave. Not yet. I had to believe that the man I loved was still in there somewhere, buried beneath this new, twisted persona. And I was determined to find him, no matter what it took. I knew I had to get to the bottom of Brian's disturbing transformation, no matter how painful the truth might be. Late one night, after he had stormed off to bed, I crept downstairs, my heart pounding in my chest. From the living room, I could hear the faint murmur of his voice, punctuated by occasional bursts of hushed laughter. Straining to listen, I made out the words "Megan" and "can't wait to see you again." A wave of nausea washed over me as the realization hit. My husband was having an affair. I pressed my ear closer to the door, tears stinging my eyes as Brian's sickly sweet endearments floated out to me. "You're the only one who understands me, Megan, the only one who makes me feel alive." White-hot anger surged through me, momentarily overshadowing the hurt and betrayal. How dare he? How dare he throw away everything we'd built together, our family, our vows, for some cheap fling? I burst through the door, my hands balled into fists at my sides. "So that's it, then?" I spat, my voice shaking with rage. "You're just going to toss me and the kids aside for some young thing at work?" Brian whirled around, his face flushing crimson as he scrambled to end the call. "Ellie, it's not what you think." "Don't lie to me," I screamed, all pretense of composure abandoned. "I heard everything, you miserable bastard. How could you do this to us?" He narrowed his eyes, his lips curling into a sneer. "Don't act so innocent, Ellie. You've been smothering me for years, treating me like a child instead of a man. Megan understands me, respects me. She's not some nagging shrew like you." The words stung like a physical blow, but I refused to back down. You're a coward, Brian. A selfish, spineless coward. And if you think for 1 second that I'm going to stand by and let you destroy this family, you're sadly mistaken. He laughed then, a harsh, grating sound that chilled me to the bone. Oh, really? And what are you going to do about it, huh? Leave me? Go ahead, be my guest. But just remember, without me, you and those brats are nothing. In that moment, as I stared into the cold, dead eyes of the man I had once loved more than life itself, I knew our marriage was over. The only question was, how far was I willing to go to protect my children from the monster their father had become? After my confrontation with Brian, I knew I had to get out. But where could I go? With no job and no savings of my own, I was completely dependent on him financially. That's when I remembered my parents' offer to let me stay with them if things ever got bad. At the time, I had brushed it off, certain that Brian and I were solid. But now, I dialed their number with trembling fingers, praying they would answer. Mom picked up on the third ring. Ellie? Sweetheart, what's wrong? Her voice was laced with concern. I took a deep, shuddering breath. Mom, I need your help. Brian, The words stuck in my throat as a fresh wave of tears spilled down my cheeks. Say no more, she said firmly. Your father and I will be there first thing in the morning to get you and the kids out of there. You just focus on packing a bag, okay? Relief washed over me, closely followed by a pang of guilt. But Mom, I can't just show up on your doorstep with no warning. What about... Don't you dare finish that sentence, Ellie Scott. She cut me off. You are my daughter, and those babies are my grandchildren. There is nothing in this world more important than keeping you all safe. Do you understand me? I nodded weakly, fresh tears blurring my vision. Thank you, I whispered. I don't know what I'd do without you guys. The next morning, as promised, my parents arrived just after sunrise. Brian had already left for work, thank God. I didn't think I could face him again, not after last night. Dad pulled me into a fierce hug as soon as I opened the door. It's going to be okay, sweetie, he murmured, stroking my hair. We're going to get through this, I promise. With their help, we packed up what little we could and left that house behind, at least for the time being. As we drove away, the kids clutching their favorite stuffed animals in the back seat, I couldn't help but feel a twinge of sadness for the life I thought we'd had. But that life, I realized, had been a lie, and it was time to start over, no matter how hard it might be. My first call once we were settled at my parents' place was to my Aunt Linda, who worked as a realtor. If I was going to build a new life for me and my kids, I needed my own place. Don't you worry about a thing, honey, she assured me when I explained the situation. I'll find you the perfect little nest egg you'll see. Just focus on those babies for now. True to her word, within a week, Linda had lined up a cozy 2-bedroom apartment in a good school district. It wasn't much, but it was ours, a safe haven, free from Brian's toxic influence. As I signed the lease, finally feeling like I could breathe again, I made a silent vow. From now on, protecting my children would be my top priority. No matter what it took, I would make sure they never had to experience the fear and pain their father had inflicted on our family. If exposing Brian's true nature to the world was the only way to keep them safe, then so be it. The gloves were off. The move into our new apartment was bittersweet. On one hand, I was relieved to finally have a safe space for me and the kids, away from Brian's toxic presence. But it also meant accepting that my marriage was truly over, and that hurt in a way I could never have prepared for. As the movers unloaded the last of our meager belongings, I surveyed the empty living room with a heavy heart. So many dreams, so many hopes for our future, all gone up in smoke because of one man's selfish actions. Mommy? Jake's small voice broke through my reverie. Is Daddy coming to live with us here too? I knelt down and pulled him into a tight embrace, fighting back tears. No, baby. Daddy, he's going to stay at our old house for a little while. Zoe toddled over, her brow furrowed in confusion. But why? Doesn't Daddy love us anymore? Of course he does, sweetie, I lied through my teeth. At this point, I wasn't even sure Brian was capable of love. Sometimes, grown-ups just need a little break from each other, that's all. The kids seemed to accept my explanation for now, but I knew that as they grew older, more questions would inevitably come, and I dreaded the day when I'd have to tell them the full, ugly truth about their father. In the days that followed, I threw myself into making our new place a home, determined to create a safe haven for my little family. But I also knew I couldn't hide from Brian forever. Sooner or later, we'd have to face each other again. That day came about a week after we moved in. I was unloading groceries when I heard a familiar laugh drifting through the parking lot. I froze, my heart pounding, as two figures rounded the corner. Brian, with his arm slung casually around the waist of a young, pretty blonde. Megan, the woman he'd betrayed me for. Before I could turn and leave, she spotted me, her eyes going wide with surprise, and was that fear? Brian, oblivious, merely grinned wolfishly. Well, well, if it isn't my darling wife, he sneered. Quite the little love nest you've made for yourself here, Ellie. I opened my mouth to respond, but Megan beat me to it. Please, Brian, don't start anything, she pleaded, her voice trembling. We were just heading out. He shrugged her off roughly. Don't be rude, Megan. Can't you see Ellie and I have some catching up to do? The smug look on his face made me want to vomit. But then I noticed the way Megan flinched at his harsh tone, and a tiny spark of realization flickered to life. Maybe, just maybe, she wasn't the villain in this story after all. Actually, Brian, I think Megan's right, I said coolly. You two run along and have fun. I've got better things to do with my time than trade insults with a lying snake like you. His eyes narrowed dangerously, but I held my ground. With a disdainful snort, he turned on his heel and stormed off, leaving Megan standing there looking utterly lost. On impulse, I reached out and touched her arm gently. Are you okay? She startled, then gave a small, sad shake of her head. No, I'm really not. In that moment, I made a decision, one that would change both our lives forever. Why don't you come inside? I offered. I think you and I need to have a little talk. Over the next few weeks, Megan and I formed an unlikely alliance, bound together by our shared experience of Brian's cruelty. As she opened up about the harassment and manipulation she'd endured at his hands, both at work and in their twisted relationship, a plan began to take shape in my mind. It was time to expose Brian for the monster he truly was, not just to me and Megan, but to the entire world. Are you sure about this, Ellie? Megan asked one afternoon as we pored over the evidence I'd painstakingly collected. Photos, emails, even a secret recording of one of Brian's vile, threatening phone calls. If we go through with this, there's no going back. I squared my jaw, my hands trembling only slightly as I looked her in the eye. I'm sure. He needs to be stopped, Megan. For your sake. For mine. For the kids. Who knows how many other lives he's destroyed with his lies and his abuse? She nodded slowly, her expression hardening with resolve. Okay, then. Let's do this. The next morning, I marched into the supermarket where Brian worked, the weight of the manila envelope in my hands grounding me like an anchor. I asked to speak with the store manager, my heart pounding in my chest. Brian's smug face fell the second he saw me stride through the door, Megan at my side. You, he growled, rising from his seat. What the hell is going on here? That's what I'd like to know, Mr. Jeffries, the manager interjected coolly. He fixed Brian with a steely glare. These ladies have brought some disturbing allegations to my attention. Care to explain yourself? For a moment, Brian looked almost comically flustered, his mouth working soundlessly. Then the mask slipped back into place, that cold, dead-eyed sneer I knew all too well. I don't know what lies these two psychos have been feeding you, he spat. But I can promise you, it's all a bunch of crazy, vindictive nonsense. This one, he jabbed a finger at me, has had it out for me ever since I left her pathetic ass. White-hot rage licked at my insides, but I forced myself to remain calm, turning to the manager with an eerie sense of tranquility. With all due respect, sir, I think the evidence speaks for itself. I handed him the file, watching impassively as he flipped through the contents, the photos of Megan's bruises, the recordings of Brian's threatening calls, the statements from other employees corroborating his pattern of intimidation and harassment. The manager's face drained of color as he digested it all. When he finally looked up at Brian again, there was a new hardness in his eyes and more than a hint of disgust. Get out, he said, his voice low and dangerous. Get out of my store and don't even think about coming back. We'll be launching a full investigation in incidents, but I can promise you, your career here is over. For once, Brian seemed to have no snide comeback, no smarmy deflection. He simply stared at me, anger and hatred burning in his eyes. In that moment, I knew he saw me for what I truly was, not a meek, helpless victim, but a force to be reckoned with. Someone who would stop at nothing to protect herself and those she loved. As security escorted him from the building, I felt Megan's hand slip into mine, giving it a gentle, grateful squeeze. "Thank you," she whispered, her eyes shining with a mixture of relief and triumph. "You saved me, Ellie. You saved us both." And in that moment I knew that no matter what lay ahead, it would all be worth it. Because this time, finally, the price for Brian's cruelty was one he wouldn't just be able to walk away from. Brian's downfall was swift and brutal after our explosive confrontation at the supermarket. Within days, news of his suspension and the impending investigation had spread like wildfire, both among his former colleagues and throughout our small community. At first, he tried to downplay it all, putting on that same smarmy, arrogant front he'd perfected over the years. "It's all just a misunderstanding," he insisted whenever someone dared to ask about the rumors. "Those vengeful witches are trying to ruin me, but they don't have a shred of proof." Oh, how wrong he was. With Megan's brave testimony and the mountain of evidence we'd compiled, the investigation quickly uncovered a sordid pattern of abuse and harassment stretching back years. Employee after employee came forward, emboldened by our actions, to share their own horror stories about Brian's cruel, bullying behavior. Even some of his buddies from the loading dock, the same ones who used to laugh and high-five him in the break room, turned against him when confronted with the ugly truth. "I always knew Jeffries was a bit of an ass," one former friend confided to me with a shamefaced look. "But I never imagined he was capable of the stuff you exposed. It's like he was living this whole secret, twisted life none of us ever saw." As the evidence mounted, the supermarket chain had no choice but to terminate Brian's employment, effective immediately, ensuring he would never be hired by any of their stores again. But that was just the start of his very public humiliation. It turned out Megan's father was a senior executive at the company's national headquarters. When he learned the full extent of how his beloved only daughter had been mistreated and manipulated by her manager, he was apoplectic with rage. Megan begged him not to get involved, worried it would seem like she was using her family connections unfairly. But her father was having none of it. "That depraved monster took advantage of my little girl," he growled, his fists clenched tightly at his sides. "He's going to pay for what he did, Megan. I'll make damn sure of it." True to his word, within a matter of days, Brian's name and photo were circulated on an internal corporate watch list, complete with a stern warning about his history of abusive behavior. No matter where he applied, every potential employer would see that scarlet letter blazoned across his file. His once bright career prospects had been torched, going up in flames, alongside the shattered remains of his ego. Everywhere he went, Brian was met with scornful looks and whispers from those who now saw him for the manipulative, vindictive snake he truly was. At one point, he even tried slithering back to me, his tail tucked between his legs, begging for a second chance. "Ellie, please," he whimpered, his eyes wet with self-pitiers. "I'm a broken man. You've taken everything from me. My job, my reputation, my whole life. Can't you find it in your heart to forgive me? For the kid's sake?" I'll never forget the look of pure, unadulterated disgust that twisted my features as I stared him down, revulsion roiling in the pit of my stomach. "Forgive you?" I spat, my voice dripping with contempt. "After what you put me through? After how you terrorized and abused all those innocent people just to feed your massive ego?" I leaned in until our faces were just inches apart, holding his pathetic gaze hostage with my own. "Not a chance in hell, Brian. Now get out of my sight before I have you arrested for trespassing. You're nothing to me anymore. Nothing but a cautionary tale, a living embodiment of karma." As he slunk away, shoulders slumped in defeat, I felt a profound sense of catharsis wash over me. The demon that had nearly destroyed my family was finally exorcised, vanquished by the light of truth and justice. It was over. I'd won. And deep down, I knew my new life, our new life, was just beginning. With Brian finally out of our lives for good, an incredible weight lifted from my shoulders. For the first time in what felt like an eternity, I could breathe freely again without the constant fear and anxiety that had plagued me during those dark days of his emotional abuse. Of course, life as a newly single mother came with its own unique set of challenges. There were days when the stress and exhaustion threatened to overwhelm me entirely. But thankfully, I had an amazing support system in the form of my parents, aunt and uncle to help pick up the slack. "You just focus on those babies, sweetie," Mom would insist whenever I tried to protest their generosity. "Let us old folks worry about the rest," and worry they did. From driving the kids to dance classes and soccer practice, to stocking my fridge with home-cooked meals, to simply being there to lend an ear whenever I needed to vent my frustrations. Their love and unwavering support was the balm that soothed my wounded soul. In time, a new sense of normalcy began to take root in our little household. The kids blossomed under the safety and stability of our fresh start, quickly putting the trauma of their father's actions behind them with the beautiful resilience that only children can possess. As for me, I found strength and purpose in throwing myself into my work at the consulting firm and being the best mother I could possibly be. Uncle Tom was thrilled to give me more responsibility, praising my ability to keep a cool head under pressure, a quality he joked must have been forged in the fires of my recent ordeal. "I always knew you were one tough cookie, Ellie girl," he'd say with a wink and that signature twinkle in his eye. "But after seeing you take down that low-life ex of yours, sheesh, I'm just glad I was never on your bad side." We'd share a laugh, but underneath the joviality was a profound sense of pride. In myself, in how far I'd come, in the life I was building from the ashes of my shattered dreams. The months rolled by, and soon it had been over a year since I'd last laid eyes on Brian's wretched face. I hoped he was suffering, wherever he'd slithered off to, that the consequences of his cruel, selfish actions weighed on him every single day. As for me and my little tribe, we were positively thriving. There was a lightness to our days now, an infectious joy that came from being truly, blissfully free from his toxic presence. My biggest worries were making sure the kids got to their activities on time and that I'd remembered to stock up on their favorite snacks. Simple, wonderful little things that I'd once taken for granted, before my life was turned upside down. Sitting on the couch one evening, watching Jake and Zoe playfully squabble over the TV remote, I felt an overwhelming surge of love and gratitude wash over me. These two incredible little humans, their bright smiles and raucous laughter filling our cozy living room, was my reason for enduring the darkness, for pressing on even when it felt impossible, for standing my ground and refusing to let a vile, manipulative bully rob me of the life I deserved. As my gaze drifted over the framed photos lining the walls, candid snapshots of birthday parties and family vacations, reminders of the joy that had once dominated our household, a serene sense of peace settled over me. Brian was a ghost, a distant and increasingly faded memory from a past life. This right here and now was my present, my future. And as long as I had these two amazing kids by my side, come what may, I knew we would be just fine. They didn't knock. They never did. My ex-husband and his mother stormed into my parents' house like they still owned me. I was in the kitchen trying to get a handle on dinner while my teenage daughter Emma studied in the dining room. The sudden intrusion made my blood boil. "What are you both doing here?" I demanded, putting down a bowl and stepping into the hallway. Mike smirked, his eyes cold. He hadn't changed. "We have unfinished business, Lisa. It's about the past. About money." I could see Emma peeking out from behind the doorframe, concern etched on her face. She knew enough to stay hidden but close. Carol, Mike's mother, crossed her arms. "This is about what's rightfully ours, Lisa." "Rightfully yours?" I shot back. "You have no right to barge in here." Mike stepped closer, his voice low. "You owe us, Lisa. Owe you. For what?" I spat. The nerve of them. Emma stepped forward, her voice trembling. "Mom, do you need me to call Grandpa?" "No, sweetie," I replied, trying to keep my voice steady. Turning back to Mike, I added, "You need to leave. Now. We have nothing to discuss." Carol's eyes narrowed. "You think you can just walk away from everything without consequences? Think again," I scoffed. "The only consequences are the ones you've brought on yourselves." Mike took another step forward, close enough that I could smell his cologne. "If you won't talk to us willingly, we can take this to court. You can't hide forever, Lisa." I clenched my fists, my nails digging into my palms. "You're not welcome here. Get out before I call the police." Carol sneered. "You're making a mistake, dear." Mike looked at Emma. "This affects you too, Emma. Think about your future." Emma stepped beside me, taking my hand. "My future doesn't include you," she said, her voice stronger than I felt at that moment. Mike's face hardened. "Fine, we'll be back. You can't run from this forever, Lisa." I watched them leave, slamming the door behind them. Emma hugged me, and I felt my resolve solidify. This wasn't over, but I wouldn't let them bully us anymore. "Mom, what did they mean about money?" Emma asked, her eyes brimming with worry. I sighed, leading her back to the dining room. "It's complicated, honey. They're trying to stir up trouble because they're bitter about the divorce, but we'll deal with it, together." Emma sat down, her face a mixture of concern and determination. "You don't have to face them alone, Mom." Her words gave me strength. "I know, sweetie, and I won't. We'll handle whatever they throw at us. We're stronger than they think." We continued with dinner, the tension lingering like a bad taste in the air. But in that moment, within the walls of my parents' house, we were safe. I knew we had a battle ahead, but I also knew we had each other, and that was enough to face whatever came next. The intrusion had stirred up a storm of emotions, and as I cleared the table, I couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the beginning. Mike and Carol were out for blood, and I had to be ready for whatever they planned next. But they underestimated the strength that comes from protecting your own. They underestimated me. The house was quiet after the door slammed shut, but a storm brewed inside me. I watched Emma pick at her food, her thoughts clearly elsewhere. "Emma, are you okay?" I asked, settling down across from her. She looked up, gnawing at her lip. "I need to tell you something, Mom. Something about Dad." My stomach tightened. "What's going on, honey?" Emma hesitated for a moment, then took a deep breath. "Before you and Dad divorced, I saw him with another woman." The words hung in the air like a dark cloud. My pulse quickened. "What do you mean? When did this happen?" Her eyes welled up with tears. "A few months before everything happened. I saw them together at a cafe. They were holding hands." The room felt like it was closing in on me. "Why didn't you tell me sooner?" "I was scared, Mom. I didn't want to make things worse. I hoped it was just nothing," she whispered, biting her lip. I reached across the table, squeezing her trembling hand. "It's not your fault, Emma. None of this is. Thank you for telling me now." She nodded, relief washing over her face. "What are we going to do, Mom?" "We're going to find the truth and make sure they face the consequences," I said, my voice firmer than I felt. The next few days were tense. I couldn't shake the image of Mike with another woman. I needed answers. One evening, as I sat on the couch with a cup of tea, I called my friend Mandy. She was a part-time investigator, and I trusted her. "Mandy, I need your help," I said as she picked up. "What's going on, Lisa?" Her concerned voice was a small comfort. "Mike was cheating on me before the divorce. I need proof, and if he's hiding anything else, I need to know." There was a pause before she responded. "I'll look into it. But be careful, Lisa. These things can get ugly." "I know, but I need to do this for Emma," I replied, glancing at my daughter, who was engrossed in her homework. Emma and I had more conversations over the following week. She remembered small details about the woman she'd seen with Mike, an old friend of mine, Rachel. The betrayal stung deeper, knowing someone I once trusted was involved. One afternoon, I confronted Emma in the living room. "Emma, what else do you remember about that woman with your dad?" Emma looked up from her book, her eyebrows knit together. She had dark hair, kind of curly. I think it was Rachel. My heart sank. "Rachel? Are you sure?" Emma nodded slowly. "I saw them together more than once, Mom. I'm sorry." "Don't be sorry, sweetie. You've helped more than you know." I struggled to keep my voice steady. Emma sighed. "I wish things were different. We can't change the past, but we can shape our future," I said, wrapping an arm around her. "We'll get through this." Mandy soon had news. She'd gathered enough evidence, emails, photos, even financial records, that proved Mike's affair with Rachel. The betrayal was now concrete. As I sifted through the damning evidence, my resolve hardened. This wasn't just about the affair. It was about the lies and the deceit that ripped through our lives. Mike had to face the consequences, and I would make sure he did. Emma and I were in this together, and that gave me strength. The storm was far from over, but now I had a direction. a purpose. We would expose the truth, and Mike would finally see the fallout from his actions. Over the next few days, I took Mandy's gathered evidence and pieced together the timeline of Mike's affair. The betrayal hurt, but knowing the truth fueled my determination. I needed more. So I called up an old friend who worked at a small-town investigative firm. "Lisa, it's been a while," said Jerry as we sat in his cluttered office. Photos filled the walls, trophies of solved cases. He offered me a smile, though his eyes were serious. "What can I do for you?" "I need your help," I replied, handing him the folder Mandy had compiled. "My ex-husband Mike. I need every detail you can find on him, and this woman Rachel." Jerry flipped through the pages, his brows furrowed. "You sure about this? Digging up more might be rough." "I'm sure." My voice didn't waver, despite the churning in my gut. "I need to know everything." "I'll get on it," he said. "Give me a few days." As I left his office, a sense of both dread and anticipation hung over me. I busied myself at work, trying to remain focused, but my thoughts always drifted back to the revelations. Days later, Jerry called me. We met at a quiet diner, away from prying eyes. He slid a second folder across the table. "You might want to sit down for this." Inside were more than just photos and emails. There were financial statements. Mike had been siphoning money from our joint savings for years, funneling it to secret accounts that funded his double life with Rachel. My finger trembled as I sifted through the evidence. "He's been meticulous," Jerry said, sipping his coffee, "but not enough to cover his tracks completely." "I can't believe this," I murmured. "Not just the affair, but the money, our savings." Jerry nodded. "He's vile. Betraying your trust like this, what do you plan to do?" I closed the folder, a fierce determination rising within me. He thinks he can get away with this, but he's about to learn otherwise. Back home, I spread the new evidence across the dining table. Emma joined me, her eyes wide with curiosity and concern. "Mom, what did you find out?" "Turns out your dad was doing more than just cheating," I said, showing her the papers. "He was stealing from us, too." Emma looked through the documents, her face a mix of anger and sadness. "How could he do this to us?" "I don't know, honey," I replied, hugging her, "but I promise he'll pay for it." Later that night, I called Mandy. "I've got more now, enough to confront him," she sighed. "Lisa, just be careful. This kind of confrontation can get messy." "I know, but I can't let him get away with this." The next day, I arranged a meeting with a family lawyer recommended by Jerry. We discussed the financial evidence, and he assured me we had a solid case. "He'll have no choice but to face the consequences," the lawyer said, his voice firm. "You've got him cornered." Despite knowing this, a knot of anxiety remained tight in my chest. With the evidence gathered, I now prepared myself for the next step, confronting Mike and Rachel face to face. It was time to reveal what I knew and watch their deceit unravel around them. As I sat on the edge of my bed that night, Emma's quiet presence beside me, I felt a sense of resolve wash over. This wasn't just about revenge. It was about reclaiming our lives from the shadow of deceit. Together, we'd bring the truth to light, and Mike would finally face the fallout of his actions. With the evidence in hand and a plan forming in my mind, we waited. The storm was about to break, and I braced myself for the confrontation ahead. I sat at the local coffee shop, staring at the door every few seconds. Rachel was late, but I expected nothing less. She liked to make an entrance. I sipped my coffee, the bitterness matching my mood. Finally, she sauntered in, her hair perfectly styled and her makeup impeccable. She spotted me and rushed over with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Lisa, long time no see, how are you?" "Doing well, Rachel. How about you?" I kept my voice neutral, gesturing to the seat across from me. She settled in, crossing her legs and leaning forward slightly. "Oh, keeping busy. Life after divorce, right?" I forced a smile. "Right. Funny how things turn out." Her eyes flickered, a brief flash of something guarded. "Yeah, funny. So, what have you been up to?" "Keeping busy myself," I said, taking another sip. "Emma and I have been adjusting, moving forward. Speaking of moving forward, I heard you ran into Mike recently." Rachel's smile faltered for just a second, but she quickly recovered. "Oh, yeah. Small world, huh?" "Small town, more like," I replied, giving her a pointed look. "You never really know people as well as you think you do." She fumbled slightly with her cup. "What are you implying?" I leaned in, my voice low but firm. "I think you know exactly what I'm implying, Rachel. Her face paled slightly before she plastered on another smile. Lisa, if you have something to say, just say it. I know about the affair, I said flatly, watching her reaction closely. I know everything. Rachel's facade cracked. She set her cup down, her hands trembling. Lisa, it's not what you think. So, you weren't having an affair with my husband? You weren't helping him steal from me? I asked, my voice dripping with sarcasm. She looked around nervously, her voice a whisper now. It wasn't supposed to happen like this. Mike said he was leaving you anyway. He said you were done. And the money? What about that? Was I done with our savings too? I demanded, feeling the anger rise. Lisa, please. Mike planned everything. I just went along with it, she stammered, her eyes pleading. You betrayed me, Rachel. Not just as a friend, but as a human being, I said, standing up. And make no mistake, you'll both pay for this. She reached for me, but I stepped back. Lisa, please, I can help. I can testify against Mike. Just give me a chance. I watched her for a moment, weighing her words. Finally, I nodded. Fine, you want to make it right? Get me more evidence. Show me you're serious. Rachel looked relieved, nodding quickly. I will. I promise. I walked out of the coffee shop, my heart pounding. Step 1 was done. Rachel was scared and willing to turn on Mike. I needed every piece of leverage I could get, and having her on my side, even temporarily, was one more card to play. Back home, I found Emma curled up on the couch, reading. She looked up as I came in, concern in her eyes. How did it go, Mom? As expected, I said, sitting next to her. Rachel's scared. She'll give us more evidence against Mike. Emma nodded, a small smile forming. Good, he can't keep hurting us. No, he can't, I agreed, hugging her tightly. And he won't. We're going to bring him down, Emma. Together. As I held my daughter, I felt a renewed sense of purpose. We had the beginnings of a plan, and the pieces were falling into place. Now we just had to see it through. And Mike, well, his time was running out. A week later, Rachel called me, her voice frantic. Lisa, I've got more. Meet me at the park near the old oak tree. I agreed and hurried there, the autumn air chilling my resolve into something harder. Rachel was already waiting, clutching an envelope. Her hands were shaking. Here, she said, thrusting the envelope at me. This is everything I could find. Emails, bank statements, all of it. I opened the envelope, my eyes scanning the documents. It was damning evidence, proof of Mike's betrayal and greed. Why are you doing this, Rachel? I asked, still not fully trusting her. She looked down, tears filling her eyes. I made a mistake, Lisa. A huge mistake. I thought he loved me, but I see now that he was using me. I just want to make things right. I nodded, pocketing the envelope. All right, but this doesn't absolve you. You still played a part. I know, she whispered, looking broken. But please, take him down. He deserves it. You can count on that, I said, turning to leave. Stay out of the way. This is between me and Mike now. Back home, I spread the new evidence across the table, my breath catching in my throat. Mandy walked in, her eyes widening at the sight. That's quite a haul. Yeah, I said, passing her a stack of emails. This should prove he was siphoning money for years. Mandy scanned through them, her face hardening. Lisa, this isn't just about an affair anymore. This is fraud, plain and simple. Exactly, I replied, organizing the papers, and he's going to face the consequences. Are you ready for this? Mandy's voice was cautious but supportive. I nodded. More than ever. The following day, I made copies of everything and met with our family lawyer. He inspected the evidence, nodding approvingly. You've got a solid case, Lisa. Mike won't be able to squirm out of this. Good, I said, leaning back in my chair, because I want him to face every bit of it. Our plan was simple but effective. Use the evidence to confront Mike and Rachel publicly, ensuring they couldn't deny or hide from their actions. Later, as I sat in my office at work, my phone buzzed with a text. It was from Emma. Mom, what's the next step? I replied quickly. We confront them at the community fundraiser this weekend. Be ready. My heart raced as the night of the fundraiser approached. Emma and I walked through the crowded event, my mind focused on the plan. Mike and Rachel were there, chatting with guests, oblivious to the storm heading their way. I approached them, my voice loud enough to catch everyone's attention. Enjoying your evening? Because it's about to get a lot more interesting. Mike's face turned ashen, pure rage flickering in his eyes. Lisa, what are you doing? Exposing the truth, I replied, holding out the envelope. We all deserve to know what you've been up to. A murmur spread through the crowd as I detailed Mike's theft and infidelity. Faces turned from curious to disgusted and whispers grew louder. Rachel looked ready to flee, guilt written all over her face. "Lisa, please, don't do this." "It's too late for that," I said, my voice unwavering. "You both betrayed and stole from me. Now everyone knows." A crowd member called out, "Isn't that Mike? What's going on?" Mike's facade crumbled and he snarled, "You've ruined me, Lisa." I met his glare with steel. "No, Mike, you ruined yourself." It felt like a weight had lifted as I walked away, Emma beside me. The truth was out, and the fallout had begun. Mike and Rachel had nowhere to hide now. Emma hugged me tightly once we were outside. "We're going to be okay, right, Mom?" I kissed her forehead, feeling the strength in her embrace. "Yes, sweetie, we are. Together, we're going to be just fine." As we headed home, the night sky clear above us, I knew one thing for sure. The future was ours to rebuild, one step at a time. The truth was burning inside me, ready to explode. It was time to face them. I stood in the thick of the crowd at the community fundraiser, feeling the weight of the confrontation ahead. Emma was at my side, her hand squeezing mine in silent support. I caught sight of Mike, flanked by a few colleagues, his charm on full display. Rachel hovered nearby, eyeing me with a mix of fear and defiance. It was now or never. I cleared my throat and stepped forward, raising my voice enough for everyone to hear. "Ladies and gentlemen, I apologize for the interruption, but I have something important to share." Heads turned in my direction, and the room fell silent. Mike's eyes narrowed, his smile faltering. "Lisa, what are you doing?" "Enough lies, Mike," I said, holding up the stack of evidence. "It's time everyone knows the truth about you and Rachel." A murmur spread through the crowd as I began laying out the details, the affair, the theft, the betrayal. Faces turned from curious to shocked to disgusted. Rachel looked like a deer in headlights, frozen as I revealed their sordid secrets one by one. "Mike's been siphoning money from our joint account for years," I said, my voice unwavering. "He's been using it to fund his affair with Rachel." "Enjoying your evening because it's about to get a lot more interesting," I added, turning to face the two of them fully. The anger in Mike's eyes was unmistakable. "Lisa, shut up!" But I was far from finished. "You betrayed me, lied to me, and stole from our family," I continued, addressing the crowd more than Mike, "and it's time to face the consequences." A ripple of gasps and whispers swept through the room. Someone in the crowd shouted, "Isn't that Mike? What's going on?" Mike lunged forward, trying to snatch the papers from my hands. "You've ruined me, Lisa." I stepped back, holding the evidence high. "No, Mike, you ruined yourself." Rachel finally found her voice, her tone desperate. "I tried to stop him, Lisa. You have to believe me." "Believe you?" I laughed bitterly. "You're just as guilty. You knew exactly what you were doing." The air was thick with tension as the fundraiser organizers pulled me aside, trying to defuse the situation. But the damage was done. The truth was out, and there was no taking it back. As Mike and Rachel stood there, exposed and humiliated, the crowd began to turn against them. Colleagues avoided their gaze, friends whispered behind cupped hands, and some even walked away in disgust. My lawyer, who had been conveniently present, stepped forward, taking the stack of evidence from me. "We'll be in touch, Mike. I suggest you prepare yourself." Mike glared at me one last time before storming out, Rachel trailing after him. The room gradually returned to a semblance of normalcy, though the tension lingered like a bad odor. Emma hugged me tightly, her eyes shining with pride. "We did it, Mom. We really did it." I kissed the top of her head, feeling a mix of relief and exhaustion. "Yes, we did. And now we can start to move on." We left the event, the cold night air feeling like a fresh start. As we walked hand in hand, I knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy, but it would be ours to walk, free from the shadows of deceit. Back at the house, as Emma drifted off to sleep, I sat by the window, looking out into the darkness. The fight was far from over, but for the first time in a long while, I felt a sense of peace. The truth was out, and the healing could finally begin. Together, Emma and I would rebuild our lives, one step at a time. The fallout began almost immediately. Mike's phone calls went unanswered as colleagues, friends, and even family members turned their backs. His once flawless reputation lay in ruins. At work, the whispers grew louder until they reached the ears of his superiors. I received a call from an old friend who worked in Mike's company, the tone hushed and serious. Lisa, you won't believe it. They're launching an internal investigation into Mike's finances. He might lose his job. Good, I replied coldly. He deserves everything that's coming to him. Meanwhile, Rachel's world was unraveling too. Her husband, blindsided by the affair and fraud, filed for divorce immediately. She showed up at my doorstep one evening, eyes red and swollen. She clutched a piece of paper in her hand. Lisa, please, she pleaded, her voice breaking. I need to talk to you. I crossed my arms, leaning against the doorframe. What do you want, Rachel? She took a deep breath, shoving the paper toward me. It's the divorce papers. I don't know what to do. That's not my problem, Rachel. You made your bed, I said firmly, my sympathy buried under layers of betrayal. Please, I didn't know it would end like this, she cried, her tears falling freely. I lost everything. You didn't think about that when you were stealing from me, did you? I snapped. You should leave. My life is falling apart, Lisa, she screamed, desperation etched on her face. I'm losing everything. And you think I should care? You brought this on yourself, I replied, shutting the door on her pleading eyes. The next few days brought more chaos for Mike. He was suspended pending the investigation, and the bank froze his accounts. Every time he tried to reach out to me, I ignored his calls. Emma and I were determined to move forward. Mom, you look tired. Are you okay? Emma asked one evening as we sat on the couch, the TV playing softly in the background. I'm fine, sweetie, I said, squeezing her hand. Just thinking about how everything is changing. Emma's face grew serious. Do we have to see Dad again? I shook my head. Not if we don't want to. We have the power to decide what's best for us. She nodded, her expression softer. Good. I don't want to see him. I understand, I replied, pulling her into a hug. We're going to be all right, Emma. The next afternoon, as I was organizing the documents to finalize the legal battles, Mike showed up at my office. He looked disheveled and desperate. Lisa, we need to talk, he said, barging in past my protests. What do you want, Mike? I said, my patience wearing thin. You've ruined me, Lisa. Everything's falling apart, he hissed, eyes filled with a mixture of anger and fear. No, Mike, you ruined yourself, I shot back. You lied, cheated, and stole. Did you expect no consequences? He sank into a chair, burying his face in his hands. I lost my job. The investigation's tearing me apart. Please, help me fix this. I stared at him, incredulous. Help you? You're unbelievable. After everything you've done, you expect me to help you? Please, Lisa. For Emma's sake, he begged, looking up with red-rimmed eyes. Don't bring her into this. She's suffered enough because of you, I said coldly. Get out of my office, Mike. Face your consequences as like an adult. His shoulders sagged as he walked out, the reality of his actions weighing him down. I watched him leave, my heart steady, knowing I had made the right choice. As the days turned into weeks, the repercussions of Mike's actions unraveled further. Rachel moved out of town, trying to escape the scandal. Mike's life continued to crumble, each new day stripping away a piece of his former self. Through it all, Emma and I found our footing in our new normal, taking it day by day. We weren't just surviving, we were starting to thrive. And that was the best revenge of all. The sun shone brightly as Emma and I unpacked the last of the boxes in our new home. It was a modest house in a quieter part of town, but it felt like a fresh start. Mom, where should I put these books? Emma asked, holding up a stack. Let's set up a small bookshelf in the living room, I suggested, smiling at her enthusiasm. We worked together, arranging our things with care. Each item found its place, and with each box emptied, the house started to feel more like home. In the early evening, as we relaxed on the couch, Emma turned to me. Do you think Dad will ever get his life together? I sighed, thinking of the wreckage Mike had made of his own life. I don't know, Emma. That's up to him now. But we don't have to worry about that anymore. She nodded, her face serene. I'm glad we're here, Mom. It feels right. Me too, sweetie, I said, hugging her close. We're starting a new chapter. To celebrate our new beginning, we decided to have a small dinner party. I invited Mandy and a few close friends. They came with warm smiles and housewarming gifts, their presence filling the house with laughter and joy. Mandy pulled me aside later in the evening, her eyes twinkling. You've come a long way, Lisa. I'm proud of you. Thanks, Mandy, I said, feeling a sense of peace wash over me. I couldn't have done it without you. As the night wound down and our guests left, Emma and I sat on the porch, gazing at the stars. She leaned her head on my shoulder. "We're gonna be okay, right, Mom?" "Yes, we are, sweetie." Together, I assured her, kissing her forehead. The days turned into weeks, and we settled into our new routine. Emma thrived in her new school, with Swap making friends and engaging in activities she enjoyed. I found solace in my work and the rhythm of our new life. One afternoon, I received a letter from Mike. He had lost everything: his job, his home, and most of his friends. But the tone of the letter was different. It wasn't angry or blaming. It was reflective, almost remorseful. "Lisa, I know I have no right to ask for forgiveness. I just wanted you to know that I realize the depth of my mistakes. I'm sorry for the pain I caused you and Emma. I hope you both find the happiness you deserve." I read the letter twice, feeling a mix of emotions. I decided not to respond. Mike's journey was his own now, and I needed to focus on ours. "Morn, everything okay?" Emma asked, noticing my thoughtful expression. "Yeah," I said, smiling, "just thinking about how far we've come." "Me too," she said, her eyes bright. "I can't wait to see what's next." Life continued, filled with small, meaningful moments that stitched our days together. Emma and I grew stronger, not just as individuals but as a family unit. We learned to cherish the quiet joy of everyday life, free from the shadow of deceit and betrayal. One Saturday morning, Emma and I decided to plant a garden in the backyard. As we dug into the soil, planting seeds for the future, we laughed and talked about our dreams. "One day this garden will be full of flowers," Emma said, her eyes shining with hope. "Yes, it will," I agreed, feeling the richness of the soil in my hands. Just like our lives. As the sun set, casting a golden hue over our new home, I felt a deep sense of contentment. The journey had been hard, filled with pain and betrayal, but we had come out stronger. The future stretched before us, a path we would walk together, step by step, one day at a time. And for the first time in a long while, I knew we would be all right. I wake up to the sound of raised voices in the living room. Henry's tone is sharp, laced with irritation. "You had no right to confront Mom like that." I swing my legs over the side of the bed, bracing myself for the confrontation. "No right? She's been treating me like a servant for years." As I enter the living room, Henry's eyes narrow. Marge sits on the couch, lips pursed, her arms folded across her chest. The tension is palpable. "Emily, dear," Marge says, her voice dripping with saccharine condescension. "I was only trying to help. You know how forgetful you can be." I bite back the retort on my tongue. For 15 years, I've endured Marge's constant criticisms, her backhanded comments about my homemaking skills. But today's insult was the last straw. Henry steps between us, ever the peacekeeper. "Mom, you should have called before coming over." Marge waves a dismissive hand. "Nonsense. I'm family. Emily knows I'm always welcome." My jaw clenches as I remember her surprise visit this morning, her snide remarks about the unmade beds and cluttered kitchen. As if I don't work part-time at the grocery store to help make ends meet. "Henry," I say, my voice strained, "can't you see how she treats me?" He sighs, running a hand through his thinning hair. "She's trying to help, Emily. Maybe try harder to get along with her." My shoulders slump, defeat washing over me. Marge smiles, victorious, as I retreat to the bedroom. How can Henry not see the truth? Later that night, as we're getting ready for bed, I muster the courage to speak up again. "Henry, your mom needs boundaries. Her constant criticism is exhausting." He pauses, toothbrush in hand. "Emily, she's family. We have to make allowances." I open my mouth, but the words die on my lips. Arguing is futile when he's blinded by misguided loyalty. Marge has him wrapped around her finger, and I'm powerless to stop it. As I drift off to sleep, a seed of resentment takes root in my heart. How much longer can I endure Marge's intrusions before it destroys my marriage? In the weeks that follow, Marge's visits become more frequent and invasive. She barges in unannounced, criticizing everything from my cooking to my cleaning skills. Even the way I parent our teenage son, Mason, isn't spared from her relentless scrutiny. "Emily, dear, you really should add more spices to your meatloaf," she'll say, wrinkling her nose in distaste. "It's so bland." Or, "Honestly, this house is a pigsty. When was the last time you dusted?" I try to brush off her comments, but they sting like paper cuts, leaving me raw and bleeding inside. Whenever I muster the courage to talk to Henry about it, he dismisses my concerns. "She's just trying to help," he insists. "You know how Mom can be." as if that excuses her behavior. One evening, Marge arrives just as we're sitting down for dinner. Mason groans under his breath, already anticipating the impending criticism. Well, if it isn't my favorite family, Marge announces, sweeping into the dining room like a tornado. She eyes the pot roast and mashed potatoes on the table, her lips curling in distaste. Emily, you really should learn to cook a proper meal. This looks dreadfully dry. My cheeks burn with humiliation as Mason stares at his plate, suddenly losing his appetite. Mom, that's enough, Henry says, but his tone lacks conviction. Marge ignores him, turning her attention to Mason. And you, young man, your room is a pigsty. No wonder you can't find anything in that mess. Mason's shoulders slump, and I feel a surge of protective anger. How dare she belittle my son like that? Marge, that's uncalled for, I snap, my voice trembling with barely contained fury. She feigns innocence, batting her eyelashes at Henry. I'm only trying to help. You know how forgetful Emily can be when it comes to housekeeping. Henry doesn't meet my eyes, and I know he's siding with her again. The familiar sting of betrayal slices through me, leaving me feeling more alone than ever. As Marge prattles on, oblivious to the tension she's causing, I catch Mason's eye. He offers a small, sympathetic shrug, and in that moment, I know he sees right through his grandmother's manipulation. If only Henry could open his eyes to the truth. Marge's manipulative tactics intensify over the following weeks. She whispers poisonous words into Henry's ear, convincing him that I'm ungrateful and undeserving of his support. She doesn't appreciate all that you do for this family, she'll say, her voice laced with faux concern. A real wife would be more attentive to your needs. Henry starts believing her lies, growing increasingly distant and critical of me. Our once loving relationship fractures under the weight of Marge's interference. One day, I notice my cherished bracelet, a family heirloom passed down from my grandmother, is missing from my dresser. I tear the bedroom apart, searching frantically, but it's nowhere to be found. A sinking suspicion settles in my gut as I recall Marge's envious glances whenever I wore the delicate piece. Could she have taken it? Henry, I say hesitantly that evening, I think your mom might have taken my bracelet. He scoffs, barely glancing up from his laptop. Enough, Emily. She would never steal. Stop blaming her for everything. My heart sinks at his dismissive tone. He's so deep under Marge's spell that he can't even consider the possibility of her wrongdoing. The next day, Marge arrives for one of her unannounced visits, that smug smile plastered across her face. As she embraces me, something glints on her wrist, catching my eye. My breath hitches in my throat as I recognize the familiar pattern of diamonds and sapphires, my bracelet. Marge, I say, my voice trembling with rage. Where did you get that bracelet? She feigns innocence, batting her eyelashes at me. This old thing? It's been in the family for years. The blatant lie ignites a fire within me. I've had enough of her deceit, her manipulation. That's my bracelet, I snarl, grabbing her wrist. The one you stole from me. Marge's eyes widen in mock surprise. Emily, darling, don't be ridiculous. Why would I steal from my own family? Henry rushes into the room, alerted by the commotion. What's going on here? Marge wastes no time playing the victim, of the tears welling in her eyes. Henry, your wife is accusing me of theft. Can you believe her audacity? I turn to Henry, desperate for him to see the truth. She's wearing my bracelet, Henry, the one my grandmother left me. But Henry's expression is cold, unyielding. Enough, Emily. Apologize to Mom right now. Marge smirks triumphantly as I stand there, humiliated and defeated. In that moment, I realize the depth of her manipulation and Henry's unwavering loyalty to her over me. As they embrace, a chilling sense of isolation washes over me. If my own husband won't believe me, who will? Shaken by Henry's unwavering loyalty to his mother, I confide in my best friend Stacy over coffee the next day. I don't know what to do, I say, my voice trembling with unshed tears. Henry is so deep under Marge's spell that he can't see her manipulation. Stacy's eyes blaze with righteous anger. Emily, they've been using your trust to manipulate you. It's time you fought back. Her words ignite a spark of determination within me. I've been too passive, too willing to turn a blind eye to Marge's toxic behavior. But no more. Stacy suggests reaching out to my estranged father-in-law, Bill, for advice. Despite his divorce from Marge years ago, he's always been kind and supportive toward me. Bill agrees to meet me at a quiet diner, his eyes filled with a mixture of sadness and understanding. "I'm sorry you've had to endure Marge's manipulation," he says, squeezing my hand. "She has a history of this kind of behavior. She drove a wedge between me and my other children, too." My heart sinks as he reveals shocking truths about Marge's past. Her lies, her deceit, her ability to turn family members against one another for her own gain. "I tried to warn Henry," Bill continues, "but he was always her favorite. She had him wrapped around her finger from a young age." Tears sting my eyes as I realize the depth of Marge's betrayal, not just to me, but to her entire family. Bill's expression hardens with resolve. "It's time we exposed her true colors, Emily, before she destroys your marriage the way she did mine." With Stacy and Bill's support, a plan starts to take shape. We'll set a trap, luring Marge into revealing her greed and deceitful nature once and for all. This time, there will be no denying the evidence to Henry. A glimmer of hope sparks within me. Maybe, just maybe, we can break Marge's hold over my husband and reclaim our lives. As I leave the diner, determination surges through my veins. Marge has underestimated me for far too long. It's time to fight back and win. With Bill and Stacy's help, I devise a plan to expose Marge's true nature once and for all. First, I need to lure her in with a false sense of security. "Marge, I've been doing a lot of thinking," I say, feigning remorse. "I realize now how much I've mistreated you. You were only trying to help, and I lashed out unfairly." Marge's eyes widen, surprise flickering across her face. But she quickly composes herself, nodding sagely. "Oh, Emily, I understand. Family can be trying at times." I force a smile, fighting the urge to roll my eyes. "I want to make it up to you. How about you come over for dinner this weekend? A fresh start between us." Marge preens, basking in her perceived victory. "Of course, dear, I'd be delighted." The next few days are a flurry of preparation. Bill slips me a sensitive financial document from Henry's workplace, one that details his secret investments and business dealings. With Stacy's help, I plant the document in a conspicuous spot in our living room. "Are you sure this will work?" I ask Stacy, doubt creeping in. She squeezes my shoulder reassuringly. "Marge's greed will be her downfall. Trust me, she won't be able to resist snooping if she thinks there's something to gain." On the day of Marge's visit, I inform Henry about the misplaced document. "I must have left those important papers lying around somewhere. We should keep an eye out for them." Henry frowns, but doesn't question me further. Little does he know, it's all part of the plan. As Marge arrives, I usher her into the living room with forced enthusiasm. "Dinner will be ready soon. Why don't you make yourself comfortable?" The moment her back is turned, I signal to Stacy and Bill, who are waiting in the basement with a hidden camera. They give me a thumbs up, and I slip out of the room, pretending to check on the food. Minutes later, Henry gets a frantic call from me. "Honey, we're out of eggs. I need to run to the store real quick. Can you keep an eye on your mom?" Suspicion flickers across his face, but he agrees nonetheless. As soon as he enters the living room, I motion for Bill and Stacy to hit record. The minutes tick by agonizingly slow as we wait. Finally, the telltale sounds of rustling papers drift through the hidden microphones. My heart pounds as Marge's greedy curiosity leads her right into our trap. This time, there will be no denying the evidence of her deceit. We return home to find Marge casually leafing through the financial documents, a self-satisfied smirk plastered across her face. "Marge, what are you doing?" Henry's voice is laced with confusion and betrayal. Her head snaps up, eyes wide with feigned innocence. "Henry, darling, I was just tidying up and stumbled across these papers." I step forward, fury burning in my veins. "Don't lie, Marge. We have you on camera snooping through private documents." Her bravado falters as Bill emerges from the hallway, Stacy close behind with the damning footage. "It's over, Marge," Bill says, his voice heavy with disappointment. "Your deceit has ruined too many lives." Marge's eyes dart between us, panic setting in. "Bill, you don't understand. I was just trying to help Henry manage his finances." "By stealing confidential information?" I challenge, crossing my arms. "We have proof of your true intentions." Stacy presses play, and the video begins to roll. We watch in tense silence as Marge rifles through the documents, her expression one of greedy curiosity. Henry's face pales as the truth unfolds before him. "Mom, how could you do this?" Marge's bottom lip trembles, and for a moment, I almost feel sorry for her. Almost. Henry, I did it for you, she wails, tears streaming down her face. Everything was for you, my darling boy. But her desperate pleas fall on deaf ears. Bill shakes his head, his jaw set in a grim line. It's over, Marge. You've manipulated your last person. He turns to Henry, his eyes filled with a mixture of sadness and resolve. Son, it's time you see the truth about your mother. The weight of Bill's words hangs heavy in the air. Henry's expression is one of utter devastation, like his entire world has been shattered. I need some time, he chokes out, retreating to the bedroom. Marge makes a move to follow, but I block her path, fury reignited. You've done enough damage, I snarl. Get out of my house and stay away from my family. For once, Marge is rendered speechless. She opens and closes her mouth, but no words come out. Finally, she turns on her heel and storms out, slamming the door behind her. An eerie silence descends upon the room, punctuated only by the sound of my ragged breathing. I did it. I finally exposed Marge's true colors, but as I catch a glimpse of Henry's haunted expression, I realize the battle is far from over. Healing the wounds she's inflicted on our family will be the greatest challenge of all. In the days following Marge's exposure, a tense silence hangs over our household. Henry is withdrawn, barely speaking to me or Mason as he grapples with the truth about his mother's deceit. I give him space, knowing this is a lot for him to process. His entire world has been turned upside down, and the woman he idolized his whole life has been revealed as a manipulative liar. One evening, I find him sitting alone in the living room, staring blankly at the wall. Henry? I approach cautiously, unsure of his emotional state. He doesn't look at me, but his shoulders tense at the sound of my voice. How could she do this, Emily? All these years. My heart aches for him, and I resist the urge to pull him into an embrace. He needs to work through this on his own terms. I'm so sorry, I say instead, the words feeling inadequate. I wish I could have protected you from her lies. A bitter laugh escapes his lips. Don't apologize. You were the only one telling the truth all along. Silence stretches between us, heavy and weighted with unspoken emotions. Finally, Henry meets my gaze, his eyes haunted. I need to see her, to hear her side of the story. Panic grips me at the thought of Marge worming her way back into our lives. Henry, I don't think that's a good idea. She'll only try to manipulate you again. But he shakes his head, resolute. I have to do this, Emily, for closure. I can see the determination in his eyes, and I know there's no dissuading him. With a heavy heart, I agree to set up a meeting with Marge. 2 days later, we gather in a neutral location, a small cafe on the outskirts of town. Marge arrives first, her face pale and drawn. When Henry enters, her expression brightens with a glimmer of hope. Henry, my darling boy, I knew you'd come to your senses. But Henry doesn't return her embrace. He holds up a hand, stopping her in her tracks. Save it, Mom. I'm here to get answers, not for your excuses. Marge's lip trembles, and for a moment, I almost feel sorry for her, almost. I did it all for you, Henry, she pleads. Everything was to protect you, to keep our family together. Henry's jaw clenches, and I can see the anger simmering beneath the surface. By lying? By manipulating and stealing from the people who loved you? Marge flinches as if struck, but Henry presses on, unleashing years of pent-up frustration. You drove Dad away, you nearly destroyed my marriage, and for what? Your own selfish desires? Tears stream down Marge's face as she crumbles under the weight of her son's accusations. Henry, please, I'm your mother. But her desperate pleas fall on deaf ears. Henry turns to me, his expression hardened with resolve. It's over, Mom. I'm done enabling your toxic behavior. From now on, you're out of our lives for good. As Marge dissolves into hysterics, Henry takes my hand, squeezing it tightly. In that moment, I know he's finally seen the truth and chosen to stand by my side. The road ahead won't be easy, but with Marge's poisonous influence removed, we have a chance to heal and rebuild our family on a foundation of honesty and trust. In the aftermath of Henry's confrontation with Marge, a weight is lifted from our household. Her toxic presence is finally gone, and we can begin to heal the wounds she inflicted on our family. It's not an easy process. Henry is plagued by guilt and self-doubt, questioning how he could have been so blind to his mother's manipulation for all these years. We seek professional help, attending couples counseling sessions to work through the trauma and rebuild our trust. At first, the sessions are tense and emotionally charged. Henry struggles to open up, his defenses still high from years of Marge's gaslighting. "How can I ever trust myself again?" he asks during one particularly difficult session. "I let her control me like a puppet." Our counselor, Dr. Miller, is patient and understanding. "Henry, your mother's behavior was calculated and insidious. She exploited your love and loyalty for her own gain. That's not a reflection on you. It's a reflection on her." Slowly, through Dr. Miller's guidance and my unwavering support, Henry begins to forgive himself. The walls he's built up start to crumble, and he opens up about the pain and confusion he's carried for so long. As for Marge, she retreats from our lives entirely. Word of her deceit spreads through the community, and she becomes a social pariah, ostracized by friends and family alike. The last I hear, she's moved out of state to be closer to her sister, the only person who will still associate with her. With Marge's toxic influence removed, our household regains a sense of peace and normalcy. Mason, who had been caught in the crossfire of the family drama, seems to thrive. His grades improve, and he becomes more engaged and social, no longer weighed down by the constant tension. And Henry, my dear Henry, the man I fell in love with all those years ago, begins to re-emerge, his warmth and kindness shining through once more. One evening, as we're enjoying a quiet dinner together, he reaches across the table and takes my hand. "Emily, I owe you the biggest apology," he says, his eyes shining with sincerity. "You stuck by me through everything, even when I was too blind to see the truth." I give his hand a gentle squeeze. "We've both been through hell, Henry, but we made it to the other side, together." A small smile tugs at his lips and he nods. "I love you, Emily. Let's make a fresh start, just the two of us." As if on cue, there's a knock at the door. Henry frowns, but I recognize the familiar rap. It's Stacy, my best friend and confidant through this entire ordeal. When I open the door, she's beaming, holding a familiar velvet box in her hands. "I managed to track down your grandmother's bracelet," she says, pressing the box into my palm. "Thought you might want it back." Tears prick my eyes as I open the box, revealing the delicate heirloom that had been the catalyst for so much pain and heartache. But as I fasten the bracelet around my wrist, I feel a sense of hope and renewal wash over me. This piece, once tainted by Marge's greed and deceit, now represents our family's resilience and the bright future that lies ahead.